All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, last night, Terence Bud Crawford did what most boxing experts didn't think that he could do, and that was to move up multiple weight classes and not only beat Canelo Alvarez, but dominate him. Okay? Crawford hit that ring last night at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas with immense confidence, and it showed from the opening bell. Crawford did something that most Canelo opponents have been unable to do to him for his storied career, and that was to make the Mexican superstar look ordinary. Now, Canelo has made a career off of his punching power versus fighters and brawlers, okay? But if you look at Canelo's career, he struggled against the boxers. And Terence Crawford, to his credit, he didn't go to Vegas to fight or brawl with Canelo. He went there to box him, okay? And that is why he's heading back to Omaha, Nebraska, still in possession of an unblemished record. Now, Crawford, like he always does, usually takes the first couple of rounds to figure out his opponent. Okay. But once he figured out Canelo, it was game on. And kind of like what we saw from Terrence Budd when he fought Errol Spence a couple of years ago. Usually, Terrence Crawford is going to sit back in those first couple of rounds and really figure you out, try to figure you out. He had to figure out Canelo a little bit quicker last night, kind of like what he did with Errol Spence. But once he figured him out, it was game on after that. Canelo, looked like the guy who moved up multiple weight classes, while Terrence Budd looked like the veteran at super middleweight. It was one of those for me. That was the biggest worry for me going into this fight. It wasn't just that he was moving up one weight class, he was moving up multiple weight classes. And then on top of that, to move up multiple weight classes and have to take on a guy the caliber of Canelo Alvarez. But the thing for me that I was most impressed by with Terence Crawford in this fight, he was able to maintain his speed as well as his defensive skills and keep Canelo Alvarez off balance. Okay, it's one of those where Crawford simply had an answer for everything that Canelo threw at him, which is the mark, in my opinion, of a great boxer. It's one of those where every time that Canelo went for that big punch, Terence Crawford had some counter punches, plural. Okay, and it was, you could see the frustration on the face of Canelo Alvarez, and as the frustration, grew, also the bruises on Canelo's face grew as well. And it's one of those where you knew that Terence Crawford was in control of this fight when by the middle of the fight, the predominantly pro Canelo crowd in Vegas was quiet. And again, more than 70,000 people were in attendance last night at Allegiant Stadium to see this fight. Now, what we just saw from Terence Budd last night was not easy, but he made it look easy as he put on a master class. You look at it, he never allowed Canelo to get into a rhythm. He took Canelo's best punches and he kept peppering Alvarez all throughout the fight. Great usage of the entire ring, constantly moving around. I'll tell you like this. Terence Budd as a southpaw really threw off Canelo Alvarez, because I'm sure that Canelo sparred with some southpaws in his camp, but sparring with southpaws and having to deal with a guy who has the skill of a Terence Crawford are two different things. On top of that, Terence Crawford has that unique skill where he's a natural southpaw, but he knows how to switch it back to orthodox and really, keep a fighter off of his rhythm. One of the better defensive boxers of all time, one of the better, ring generals, if you will, definitely of this era right here. Plain and simple, the judges got it right. Okay, all three judges awarded this bout to Terence Crawford. I look at him last night, and what we saw from Crawford, it was a little bit of Floyd Mayweather, it was a little bit of Bernard Hopkins, and it was a little bit of Andre Ward uh, combined with the skills of Terence Crawford. You look at Floyd Mayweather, a lot of people feel that he's one of the best defensive boxers ever. You look at Bernard Hopkins, and when you think about, the executioner in his prime, he was one of those guys. Once he figured you out, it was game on. The same thing for an Andre Ward, and of course, that lineage has carried on to a guy like Terence Crawford. Hands down, Crawford just cemented himself as the top middleweight of this era. As in my opinion, he just went out there and beat the best one. And let's not forget the master class that Terence Bud Crawford put on a couple of years ago when he dominated Errol Spence. Now, some people are going to say, should there be a rematch? Um, I'm never going to say no, because at this point, I feel like for Terence Crawford and Canelo Alvarez, if the decimal point is put in the right spot on the paycheck, I guarantee you that they'll do it. Crawford is set to turn 38 years of age in a couple of weeks. Canelo is 35. For each of these fighters, there's really nobody else out there for them to fight. And I mean, Canelo has made more money boxing than Terence Crawford has. And this clearly was Terence Crawford's biggest payday of his career, along with the Errol Spence fight. But nonetheless, if they put the paycheck, the decimal point, excuse me, in the right spot, I'm sure we'd have a rematch. If you're Terence Crawford, there's really nothing left for you to prove at this point. Honestly, if you're Canelo Alvarez, there's really not a lot for you to prove either. It's one of those, again, like I've said before, and this is not a slight to Canelo. Canelo is at his best when he's in there with brawlers and fighters, and he's able to go blow for blow and try to dictate things and let his power do the talking. Anytime that Canelo has had to box throughout his career, he's gotten like he's been met with struggles. Some of the fights he lost, some of the fights were very, very close. The first fight with Triple G, I felt like Gennady Golovkin won that fight. The second fight with Triple G was very close as well. The fight with Erislandy Lara was another very close fight. But nonetheless, that doesn't take away from what Canelo Alvarez has done in the ring. Just like I said before, it's one of those when he gets in there with the boxers and he has to work a little bit more, it throws him off of his game. And the bottom line is, Canelo never got into a rhythm last night with Terence Crawford. So from here, let's just see what the next step is for both of these fantastic fighters. But the night of September 13th definitely belonged to Terence Crawford. He leaves with immense hardware, as he is now the WBA Super, WBC, IBF, WBO, and Ring Magazine Super Middleweight champions. And it's one of those where you have a lot of hardware when you can't even wear all of your belts back to the dressing room after your fight. Part of your entourage has to do it for you. But nonetheless, Terence Bud was a man on a mission, just like he was against Errol Spence a couple of years ago. He didn't leave it to doubt. He dominated from the word go, and when it was all said and done, Terence Bud is still the king of the mountain in this part of boxing. But folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank each and every one of you for checking out the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. And as always, if you like what you heard and saw on this podcast, please feel free to hit that like button as well as subscribing to this channel. Like I always say, it's greatly appreciated. Also, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, you can check me out anytime at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. And that also goes for Instagram, where you can check me out at 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge. Also, if you're on Facebook, be sure to check us out at the Sports Depot 365. And as far as I'm concerned, one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. But until next time, fine folks, my name is William Martin. I am signing off, and I'm saying thanks once again for checking out the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. Be well, everybody.